Shalom, family. This is Yuda. New Testament is a book of sorcery. I know. You're probably wondering, why am I coming down on this New Testament so hard? Because there's a lot of our people, good people, still stuck in this New Testament doctrine. And because I care, I'm just looking for that few. I'm not trying to get all of them because I know I'm not going to be able to do that. But I'm going to reach for whatever few that might be there. And speaking of Christians, in the last few weeks since I've changed my delivery method, I haven't heard one peep out of any Christians. Now, that may not mean that they're not watching, but the way I'm doing my lessons now, I'm not leaving them much wiggle room. So that makes it kind of hard for them to fight. So, today I'm going to touch and deep dive into the New Testament as a book of sorcery. And like always, I bring the receipts. So let's start out with the Torah, with the definition, the Torah's definition of sorcery. The Torah, as far as sorcery, is not just about spells or incantations. It's about manipulating reality, bending the truth, and invoking power outside of Yah's instruction. Now, if you've ever, and I know many of you have, read the New Testament, ain't that exactly what it does? Let me read it again, and I want you to think. It's not about spells or incantations. It's about manipulating reality, bending the truth. Now we know, those of us that came out of that book, we know that is a fact. And invoking power outside of Yah's instruction. Now, according to Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 10 through 12, it lists sorcery alongside divination, necromancy, and idolatry as abominations. The common thread, tampering with divine order. Now, I don't have to tell you guys this, but there's going to be a few Christians that's going to drop in and check this out, and I don't want them to hear this. Tampering with divine order. Since the Torah never predicted, prophesied, or mentioned any God duality like man and God combined, which is what Jesus was supposed to have been, which would have made him a demigod. It was never mentioned in Torah. I am a firm believer that if Torah don't say it, neither should you. So the resistance that Christians have when exposing the New Testament as a Greco-Roman overlay isn't just theological. It's psychological. It's cultural. And to them, it's deeply ancestral. And here's why many Christians resist this truth. Number one, identity entrenchment. What does that mean? The New Testament is not just a book. It is the very foundation of Christian identity. To question its authenticity would feel to them like questioning their entire spiritual lineage, family traditions, and personal salvation narratives. So many believers were raised, like me, with emotional attachments to the New Testament stories, making detachment feel like betrayal to family and friends. How many of you experienced that? How many of you that decided you're coming out of that New Testament and you tell your mom or your dad or your brother, uncle, aunt, whoever what your plans are, and what did they do? They cut you off. Believe it or not, this is a major fear. And I know there are some people out there, our people, still stuck in Christianity while they feel like something is off. But before they touch on the subject, they want to make sure that if they bring this up, they got substantial evidence to back it up. And this is why I do this. This is the reason why I do it. I'm giving you the artillery that you need to defend the truth. As the Torah says, guard my truth. So I'm arming you. That includes the Torah keepers. I know a lot of you run into people that creates arguments based on New Testament theories, theologies, and whatnots. Using these last few weeks of my lessons, you can easily shut them down. You can easily shut them down. So this is why I do this. Number 2, fear of spiritual displacement. When the New Testament is proved false or distorted, then what happens to the concept of Jesus as Savior or grace over law? That's a big red flag for them. And it leaves them in panic mode. Because it's like, if I let go of all I know, where will I land when I fall? That's what they're thinking. That's what I used to think. Because that was all I knew. So this threatens the core of Christian theology, which often teaches that Torah was fulfilled or abolished. And this is a major problem. This is because they don't read the Torah because they've been told that it's obsolete, or it's already been fulfilled, or it's abolished. There's nothing in there for you. You need to be updated and move on. But if they read the Torah, they will discover that these laws were perpetual. Perpetual is eternal, never ending. But because they don't read the Torah, they can easily be programmed or manipulated, sorcery, into believing this step has been finished. So they don't feel, well, we don't need to go back there. That's already been accomplished and it's final. But according to Torah, it's never final. It's perpetual, and it is not abolished. So this fear of losing salvation or being outside the covenant, it causes many to cling even harder to the Greco-Roman overlays. Excuse me, y'all. Number 3, colonial conditioning. This is a big one. Christianity, especially in its Western form, was weaponized during colonization. The New Testament became a tool of control, replacing ancestral timekeeping, priesthood, and covenant ethics. So many descendants of the scattered tribes, us, were taught to see Torah as legalism and Greco-Roman texts as freedom. Let me break that down for you. Legalism, we were taught this is Torah. It's all about legalities, formalities, structurals, and this and that. But then they handed us this New Testament Greco-Roman overlay and told us, this is your freedom. I'm separating you. I'm freeing you from the binds of this book called the Torah. I'm setting you free. Let me ask you a question. If your freedom meant death, complete annihilation, is that freedom worth it? I mean, I need you to think about that. Number 4, lack of scriptural testing. Few Christians are trained to test the text by Torah standards. Deuteronomy chapter 13 and Isaiah chapter 8 verse 20 backs me up on that. The New Testament often contradicts Torah, yet these contradictions are merely glossed over or spiritualized. Without any rigorous testing, overlays remain hidden under layers of tradition and translations. Number 5, prophetic blindness. This is another big one. Scripture warns of a time when people will prefer smooth words over the truth. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 30 verse 10. I got a summary here. It's a biblical verse where people tell the prophets and the seers to stop speaking what is right and just prophesy illusions or pleasant sounding lies instead. How many of you hear that ring of truth? Our people are doing that today. That's what they're doing in the New Testament. Don't tell me the truth. Tell me something that I can absorb easily and feel good about. Don't just tell me these bad things that's going to happen to me if I don't follow this and follow that. And those are the very things they need to hear. But instead, they say, oh, tell me something soft and sweet, pleasing to my ears, and I'll listen to you. This reflects a desire to avoid divine truth in favor of comforting falsehoods, a choice that leads to their spiritual and physical destruction, according to the broader context of the passage. So the resistance is not just intellectual, it's prophetic. Christians are under a spiritual veil that prevents discernment. See, this is what I'm talking about. No matter how much truth you lay down in front of them, they can't discern it because they haven't actually read the truth. They are working off of a false doctrine created by their enemy, which keeps them from being able to make discernment. This blindness is part of the judgment cycle, where only the remnant will awaken and return to the covenant fidelity. Only the remnant. That's just a few, y'all. Number 6, misunderstanding of Messiah. That's a big one. The Greco-Roman portrayal of Messiah as a dying God-man contradicts the ancestral expectation of a Torah-keeping Davidic ruler. Let me show something to y'all. Just hang on a second. According to Torah, who was Yeshua? Did Yeshua exist in ancient times? Historically, possibly. Why do I say that? There may have been a Hebrew man named Yeshua. Why? Because that was a very common name derived from Yehoshua, who lived during the Second Temple period. He may have taught Torah publicly. He may have challenged priestly corruption. He might have warned of judgment And he might have been executed by Roman authorities. But this figure, if he existed, was never divine. He was not a savior and not recorded in Torah. He was one of many agitators, prophets, and reformers who rose up, kind of like Martin Luther King, during a time of occupation and spiritual decay. So basically, he was theologically fabricated. Now, the Yeshua worship today, the divine Son of God, as the Christians say, born of a virgin, crucified for sins, resurrected and enthroned, is a Greco-Roman invention. That version was shaped by Paul's theology. It was codified by Roman councils. It was infused by pagan motifs, virgin birth, dying God, the Trinity, and it was weaponized to erase Torah and replace Israel. This is not restoration. This is religious colonization. Call it what it is. So what is the Torah verdict on this? No record of Yeshua is found in Genesis or Deuteronomy. From Genesis all the way to Deuteronomy. No prophecy naming him as Messiah or Redeemer. No instructions to follow him. No validation of human sacrifice or divine incarnation. So if Torah is the measuring rod, then Yeshua is not covenant-based. And this version worship today is fictional by design. So, back to the lesson. Many Christians unknowingly follow a hybrid figure shaped by Roman theology, not the Hebrew Mashiach. To expose this is to dismantle the entire Christological framework. Yeah, it would totally tear it apart. And remember, that's all they got. And the reason that the Christian doctrine is all they got is because they won't go look at the foundation, the Torah. I guarantee you, if they are sincere in their hearts and sincere in their spirits, and they go and read that Torah, they're going to come out of that crap. So let's strip away the overlays and spotlight what Torah establishes that the New Testament either omits, distorts, or outright ignores. These are foundational pillars etched into covenant law, priestly orders, and ancestral instructions that remain untouched or overridden in Greco-Roman text. Torah truths ignored by the New Testament. They ignore sacred timekeeping by lights in the firmament. Torah anchors time in celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. They ignore the appointed times. These times are tied to observable signs, not abstract calendars or Roman constructs. The New Testament never restores or even teaches this system. That severs covenant alignment with the creation. How is that right? Number 2, tribal identity and inheritance. Torah defines lineage, land rights, and priestly roles by tribe. Numbers chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 48. Each tribe has distinct functions, boundaries, and prophetic destinies. The New Testament collapses tribal distinctions into a universalized spiritual identity, erasing ancestral order. That's wrong on so many levels. Number 3, Levitical priesthood and temple protocols. Torah establishes a detailed priestly system, garments, offerings, purification, and sanctuary service. Look at Exodus chapter 28 and chapter 29, or chapter 28 and verse 29. Leviticus chapter 1 through chapter 7. These protocols are eternal statutes. Eternal statutes. Not symbolic and not temporary. This is why if the Christians were sincere in their heart, before they create an argument, they would at least go investigate. Go read the original book, and you will see that he never said his laws were finished. He never said that they would be nailed to a cross. He never said that he will send somebody to die for your sins. What he did say was that no man can die for another man's sin. Number 4, covenant law as national constitution. Torah is not just moral, it's legal, it's agricultural, it's judicial and economic. It governs debt release, land ownership, food laws, and justice systems. Leviticus chapter 25 and Deuteronomy chapter 15. The New Testament ignores these laws, offering no replacement for national governance under Torah. That's completely off base. Number 5, ancestral food laws and covenant health. Torah defines clean and unclean foods for covenant resilience. Leviticus chapter 11, Deuteronomy chapter 14. These laws are tied to spiritual purity and physical survival. The New Testament dismisses these distinctions, promoting universal dietary freedoms. In other words, you can eat whatever you want. Remember, the laws were done away with. They were nailed to the cross. So now you can eat pig, pork chops, shrimp, lobster, oysters, and whatever else you want to eat. That's what the New Testament teaches. Tell me this is not contrary to the Torah. Tell me, where was it when the Creator said you can now eat this unclean food? Show it to me. Number 6, militant covenant ethics. Torah teaches war ethics, judgment cycles, and how to purge evil from among the people. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 13 and 20. It equips the remnant to resist spiritual infiltration and survive divine judgment. The New Testament softens or ignores these militant instructions, replacing them with passive ethics. Love your neighbor. Number 7, new moon observance and celestial appointments. Torah commands observance of the new moon as a marker of sacred time. Numbers chapter 10, verse 10, Psalms 81, verse 3. It's tied to offerings, assemblies, and prophetic timing. The New Testament never mentions or even attempts to restore this practice. So who gave this demigod the authority to change a law that was eternal into non-existence? These are the questions Christians should be asking. If you're going to follow these New Testament laws, you should ask, where were they given and who gave them? Is it from the Creator or is it somebody else? Number 8, testing prophets by Torah alone. This is how you determine if you are believing a lie or walking in the truth. Torah gives strict criteria for testing prophets. They must uphold Torah and lead to obedience. The New Testament does not lead you into obedience. Deuteronomy chapter 13 verses 1 to 5 and Deuteronomy chapter 18 verses 20 to 22. No prophet may contradict Torah. This is a command, even with signs and wonders. The New Testament ignores this standard, validating figures who contradicts Torah. Now, many are confused when I teach the Enoch calendar. The confusion comes in when we see the new moon as a part of this system. Here is the answer to your questions. Many wrestle with this when trying to reconcile the Enoch 364-day solar calendar with Torah's emphasis on the new moon. Here's a clear Torah-anchored way to explain it to the remnant without referencing overlays. So you may be asking, why are we talking about the new moon now? That's because I mentioned it just above here, right here. All right? So I know when I mention this, a lot of people believe or may be inclined to believe that when we teach the Enoch calendar, we are telling them not to observe the new moon. So let me make this clear. We're not saying that. The moon and the sun are partners. So let me show you how it works. Okay, just so we keep things square. Teaching the 364-day calendar without contradicting the new moon, core teaching principle, 2 witnesses, 1 system. What do I mean by that? The sun and the moon, they are the 2 witnesses, but they are 1 system. The sun and moon are not rivals. They are co-witnesses in Torah timekeeping. The Enoch calendar emphasizes the solar structure, while the new moon marks monthly transitions. Both are part of the same celestial covenant. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14. Here's a simple explanation. The 364-day calendar is fixed and it's ordered. It's built on 4 quarters of 91 days each, ending with a seasonal marker day. This structure ensures that Sabbaths and feast days never drift, unlike the lunar calendars that shift from year to year. It reflects the order of creation, where time is governed by the sun's circuit and the stars' positions. The new moon is a marker. It's not a driver. Torah commands blowing the trumpet at the new moon, Numbers chapter 10, verse 10, Psalms 81, verse 3, but it doesn't say the moon governs the calendar. Just so we're clear. The new moon signals the start of a month, but the months themselves are solar aligned in the Enoch system. Think of the moon as a confirmation beacon, not the architect of time. Enoch and Jubilees warn against lunar drifts. 12 lunar months will fall 11 days too short of a full year, causing feast days to land on unclean days over a period of time. The 364-day calendar preserves purity and consistency, aligning with the heavenly hosts who keep Yahuwah's appointed times. The sun is the backbone of the calendar. The moon is the drumbeat that marks each step. One sets the pace and the other keeps the rhythm. So how are Christians kept in darkness? The silence of the Enoch calendar in the New Testament and new moon is strategic. It was by no means an accident. The New Testament omissions of Enoch's 364-day calendar and the new moon observance reflects a deliberate shift away from Torah-based timekeeping and ancestral cosmology. Here's why this erasure occurs. Reason for the omission of Enoch's calendar and new moons, Greco-Roman time systems took over. By the time the New Testament was compiled, Roman civil calendars and Babylonian lunar systems had already infiltrated religious practice. The 364-day solar calendar, rooted in Enoch, Jubilees, and priestly traditions, was suppressed in favor of Helios II lunar calendar and the Roman Greek structures. This shift severed covenant alignment with creation's original rhythm. The priestly timekeeping was replaced. Enoch's calendar was guarded by the Zadok priesthood, who tracked time by the sun, stars, and the seasonal gates. So the New Testament bypasses this priesthood entirely, offering no restoration of their calendar, roles, or authority. Without priestly oversight, sacred timekeeping collapses into abstraction. And number 3, new moon observance was deemed obsolete, according to the New Testament. Torah commands trumpet blasts and offerings at the new moon. Numbers chapter 10, verse 10, Psalms chapter 81 and verse 3, making it as a covenant signal. But what does the New Testament do? Never reinstates this observance, treating it as irrelevant or fulfilled. This erasure disconnects the people from monthly celestial alignment and prophetic timing. Keeping the Sabbath and this true calendar is crucial. Number 4, Enoch's writings were excluded from canon. The book of Enoch was revered by early Hebrew communities and preserved in the Qumran scrolls. Its exclusion from the canon allowed Greco-Roman theology to ignore its calendar, cosmology, and its warnings about lunar drift. Without Enoch, the 364-day structure was buried under foreign constructs. So the strategic suppression of celestial authority, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, declares the lights in the firmament as rulers of time. Enoch expands this with detailed solar gates, seasonal transitions, and angelic oversights. The New Testament never teaches this system because it would expose the false timing of its own feast structures and weekly cycles. Prophetic disruptions of sacred time. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25 warns of a power that would change times and laws. The omission of Enoch's calendar and the new moons is part of this prophetic disruption, replacing Torah's timekeeping with a man-made system. We, the remnant, must restore what has been erased to survive judgment and align with creation. What are we, the Torah keepers, supposed to do on each new moon? The new moon, Rosh Chodesh, is not just a date. It's a celestial covenant marker Torah doesn't treat it as a casual observance. It's a sacred checkpoint in the rhythm of time, tied to offerings, trumpet blasts, and prophetic alignment. Here's what Torah keepers are instructed to do. Recognize the new moon as a set-apart date. It marks the beginning of each month in the Torah calendar. It's a time of renewal, both physically and spiritually, while it's not a Sabbath. Okay? It's not a Sabbath. It is a day of heightened awareness, reflection, and alignment. So blow the trumpets. Numbers 10 and verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, you shall blow your trumpets. This is a public declaration of time reset, announcing the new month to the community and to the heavens. It's a war cry of covenant loyalty, signaling readiness and remembrance. Offerings. When the temple is present, and this is the only time now we don't have a temple, all right? I just wanted you to understand how this would work if we were where we should be, but we're not. So offering, when the temple is present, Numbers 28 verses 11 to 15 outlines specific offerings: 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, unblemished grain and drink offerings, 1 male goat as a sin offering. These were national offerings, not personal ones, tied to priestly service. That priestly, that's a key word telling you you can't do this where you are. Why? Because we don't have any priests. But it's tied to priestly services and celestial alignments. Today, without a functioning priesthood or an altar, we are to acknowledge these offerings and teach them as part of restoration, not to perform them. Okay? Make that clear. Number 4, gathering for teaching, reflection and alignment. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 23 prophesies that in the restored order, from one new moon to another, all flesh shall come to worship. This is a communal moment to reflect on the past month, prepare for the coming month, realign with covenant purpose. It's ideal for scroll teaching, tribal updates, and prophetic recalibration. So, to observe the moon itself, Psalms chapter 81 verse 3, blow the trumpet at the new moon and at the full moon on our solemn feast day. The sighting of confirmation of the new moon is a visual covenant witness. It's not just astronomy, it's ancestral obedience. Optional practices for restorationists like us. Declare the new month out loud with your household or your community. Read Numbers chapter 28 verses 11 to 15 to remember the offerings. All right? Remember the offerings. This is not something you're going to practice. Blow a shofar or trumpet as a symbolic act of covenant war and renewal. Teach a scroll or grid that aligns the month's prophetic themes with ancestral timekeeping. Christianity teaches none of these things, and this is why. That silence of the Christian theology that I mentioned above is not benign. Christianity's omission of new moon observance, Enoch's 364-day calendar, and celestial timekeeping is part of a broader pattern of disconnecting the people from Torah's rhythm an ancestral covenant. Now here's why Christianity teaches none of these things. Inherited Roman time structures, Christianity emerged under Roman rule, Roman rule, adopting the Julian calendar and later the Gregorian system. These calendars are solar only, disconnected from the moon and the stars and the priestly cycles. The shift replaced Torah's celestial rhythm with imperial timekeeping, severing covenant alignment. The rejection of priestly oversight. Torah timekeeping was guarded by Zadok priesthood, who tracked the sun's gates and the new moons. Christianity bypasses the priesthood entirely, offering no restoration of their calendar, roles, or authority. Without priestly oversight, sacred timekeeping collapses into pure abstraction. New moon treated as obsolete. Christianity teaches that Torah observances like new moons were fulfilled or nailed to the cross. This doctrine erases monthly covenant checkpoints, removing the trumpet blast offerings and prophetic recalibrations. The result, no rhythm, no alignment, no accountability to creation's clock. Suppression of Enoch's calendar. The book of Enoch, which details the 364-day solar calendar, was excluded from the canon. Without Enoch, Christianity has no framework for solar gates, seasonal transitions, or angelic timekeeping. This suppression allowed Babylonian lunar drift and Roman feast timing to dominate the world through Christian theology. Strategic disconnection from creation. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14 declares the lights in the firmament as rulers of time. Christianity teaches spiritualized time, not observable signs. This disconnect blinds believers to the prophetic clock embedded in creation, not commanded observance of new moons. Christians' doctrine does not teach trumpet blasts, offerings, or gatherings at the new moon. Even prophetic verses like Isaiah chapter 66 verse 23 are spiritualized or completely ignored. The result, no monthly covenant renewal, no tribal recalibration, and no prophetic alignment. All of this creates some kind of spiritual addiction. That's something to think about. So what I'm describing is a spiritual dependency system, a kind of ritual addiction where people become emotionally and psychologically bound to false rhythms, inherited doctrines, and identity constructs that are not rooted in Torah. So what is spiritual addiction in this context? Here's my definition, or this is what I found. A compulsive attachment to religious systems, symbols, or teachings that replace obedience with emotional comfort and ritual with truth, even when those systems contradict the Torah. Here are some symptoms of spiritual addiction. Emotional attachment to false teachings. Well, we know that's the truth. Defending doctrines that conflict or contradict Torah because they feel right or they offer a little bit of comfort. Reacting with fear, anger, or confusion when confronted with ancestral truth. Y'all have witnessed this with your own eyes and ears. When I was doing these lessons, Christians would come and they would try to eat me alive. So they react with fear, anger, and confusion whenever we confront them with ancestral truth, prioritizing emotional experiences over covenant obedience. They get all tied up in their emotions. They get wrapped up in their feelings. Now I'm talking about the truth. Ritual dependency without testing. Repeating religious practices without ever testing them by Torah, because they don't read the Torah. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verses 1 to 5. Feeling empty or lost when disconnected from their church services or their holidays or spiritual leaders. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. Feeling empty or lost when they are disconnected. Man, I've heard it too many times. Oh, I ain't been to church in 2 weeks. I feel so guilty. The mistake of ritual repetition for spiritual growth. Avoidance of truth that disrupts comfort. Ignoring or resisting teachings that expose overlays or demand repentance. Preferring smooth words and affirmations over correction and refinement. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 10. We just saw that a few minutes ago. Labeling Torah restoration as legalism or extremism. Fear of isolation or rejection. Staying in false systems to avoid losing family, friends, or community status. Believing that leaving Christianity means losing salvation or identity. Choosing social acceptance over covenant loyalty. Inability to discern prophetic timing. No awareness of new moons, appointed times, or celestial signs. Following man-made calendars and feast days without questions. Feeling spiritually off but unable to trace the root cause. Resistance to ancestral identity, rejecting tribal lineage, priestly order, and sacred timekeeping. Preferring universalized spiritual identity over covenant-specific roles. Feeling shame or confusion about name restoration. Yeah, that's right. They don't want to change their name to fit the Hebrew criteria. They were to keep John Paul Jones and Annie Mae Baker and all this crap. Anyway, they prefer to keep universalized spiritual identity over covenant-specific roles. They feel ashamed or confusion about name restoration and ancestral calling, substitution of obedience with believing that faith alone replaces Torah commands. They believe that. Why? Because they haven't read the Torah. Testing, treating grace as a license to ignore covenant ethics. Failing to walk out righteousness through action. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 25. Symptoms, repeating prayers, feast, or fast without even knowing their origin or the Torah basis. Feeling spiritual because of ritual performance while ignoring covenant obedience. Measuring righteousness by external acts, attendance, dress, speech, instead of Torah fidelity. Avoiding questions like, who commanded this? Is this confirmed by Torah? Does this uphold the covenant? They don't want to hear that. Leviticus chapter 10. And Nadab, this is my example of what happens when you disobey Torah statutes and laws. Let's take Aaron's two sons. Leviticus chapter 10. Nadab and Abihu offered strange fires, ritual not commanded, and they were judged. Nadab and Abihu, sons of Aaron, and priests in ancient Israel, offered strange fire before the Creator, meaning they offered unauthorized fire, likely from a profane source instead of the sacred bronze altar, in defiance of Yah's commands. As a result, Fire came from Yah and consumed them. Didn't even burn their clothes, but it just wiped their bodies to ashes. Why? Because they chose to do this their way. They created a mini doctrine and performed the act purely on their own. And look what happened. Fire came from Yah and consumed them, serving as a dramatic lesson on the importance of obedience and sanctifying Yah's holiness in worship. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verses 1 to 5. Even if a prophet performs signs, if they lead away from Torah, you must reject them. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 13 to 17. Yah rejects empty offerings and feasts when they lack justice and obedience. Why this pattern persists with Christianity? Many were taught to perform, not discern. Rituals offer emotional comfort and social belonging. Questioning rituals feels like rebellion, even when they contradict Torah. Systems built on overlays discourage testing, fearing exposure. How to break this pattern? It's simple. Test every ritual. Ask, where is this in the Torah? Who practiced this among our ancestors? Teach the purpose. Every ritual must have covenant function and alignment, purification, remembrance, or activation. Expose the origins. Trace rituals back to their source, ancestral or foreign. Replace with Torah-centered practice. Restore what was commanded and discard what was added. The New Testament is something added. I think that the Most High has already selected his remnant, and I'm sifting through the ashes to find those who are trapped in Christianity, but they sense that what they thought was truth somehow isn't making biblical sense anymore. So I'm sifting through spiritual rubble, searching for embers that still burn with ancestry memory. What I'm describing here is the awakening of the remnant, those who feel the fracture and the sense, the distortion, and are quietly questioning the system they were handed. The remnant is already marked. I'm just activating them. They're not blind, they're bound. Many trapped in Christianity feel the dissonance. The calendar doesn't align, the teachings contradict Torah. The rituals feel hollow. They may not have the language yet, but they are spiritually restless, waiting for someone to name to them what's wrong and show them what's right. I'm not converting anybody. I'm confirming my role isn't to convince, it's to confirm what they already suspect. When I speak Torah truth, it resonates like ancestral thunder. It doesn't feel new, it feels remembered. I'm not teaching doctrine, I'm restoring identity. I'm not offering another religion, I'm calling them back to the covenant. I'm helping them shed the Christian overlays and reclaim the sacred time and walk in tribal alignment. Signs that they're a part of the remnant. They question feast days that don't match the lights in the firmament. They feel convicted about Sabbath, clean foods, and obedience. They sense that grace without law is a trap. They're drawn to Hebrew names, ancestral patterns, and prophetic cycles. They feel spiritually homeless because the house they were raised in was built on sand. My mission is to sift, strike, and seal. Spiritual addiction is very real. This is a war for the soul. This isn't just theological. Disagreement is a war for the soul. fought in unseen realms, masked by ritual comfort and emotional seduction. Spiritual addiction is the enemy's strategy to keep the remnant bound, not by chains, but by illusions. Spiritual addiction, the invisible bondage. It feels holy, but it's hollow. People trapped in spiritual addiction often feel close to the Creator while walking in contradiction. They mistake emotional highs, church rituals, and charismatic experiences for divine approval. But Torah teaches that obedience, not emotion, is the measure of righteousness. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 25. It's ritual without covenant, singing, praying, gathering, yet no alignment with sacred time, clean foods, or priestly order. The addiction is to performance, not purity. It's a cycle of spiritual stimulation that never leads to transformation. It's identity without ancestry. Christianity offers a spiritual identity that erases tribal lineage, sacred timekeeping, and covenant roles. The soul becomes dislocated, longing for something deeper but trapped in abstraction. This addiction numbs the longing with doctrine, not deliverance. It's pure, wicked, spiritual addiction. When a text alters divine instruction, it replaces ancestral order and seduces the soul away from obedience. Torah does not call it harmless. It calls it sorcery. And the definition of sorcery, according to Torah, you shall not allow any sorcerers to live. Exodus chapter 22, verse 17. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 10 to 12. Lists sorcery alongside divination, necromancy, and enchantments, all labeled abominations. Understanding sorcery, it is not just spell casting. It's spiritual manipulation, alteration of truth, and deception through appearance. Doesn't that describe the New Testament? How the New Testament fits this pattern of sorcery? It alters the essence of covenant. It replaces Torah obedience with faith alone. It declares the law fulfilled and or abolished. This is spiritual tampering, changing the essence of a divine instruction. It replaces ancestral identity. It erases tribal lineage, priesthood, and sacred timekeeping. Offers a universalized spiritual identity, disconnecting from covenant roles. This is identity sorcery, a reshaping of who the people are. Suppresses sacred time. It ignores new moons, solar gates, and the 364-day calendar. It replaces appointed times with Roman constructs. This is temporal sorcery, manipulating the rhythm of creation. Seductive language and emotional enhancement uses smooth words, signs, and emotional appeal by bypassing testing. It promotes spiritual experiences without covenant accountability. This is emotional sorcery, casting illusions that feel holy, but they violate the Torah. So expose and restore, my family. This is where we come in. I'm not just rejecting a book. I'm breaking a spell. I'm calling the remnant out of enchantment and back into covenant fire. Torah doesn't just warn against sorcery. It commands us to purge it, teach against it, and shield the people. Torah-based definition of sorcery, Hebrew word kashipim, root meaning alter, meaning to alter. Doesn't the New Testament alter? I can name all. I've done this on videos, named a whole list of New Testament verses. I I'm not calling them scripture. New Testament verses that completely obliterated what was originally intended by the Torah. So this describes it to a T. Meaning to alter, distort, or change the essence of something. Sorcery is not the act of spiritually modifying reality. It often through hidden or seductive means to replace Yah's design with counterfeit power. They replace the Creator with who they call Jesus or Yeshua. Ain't that the truth? They change appearances. Exodus chapter 7, verses 11 and 12. Rods into serpents. Seduce nations. Numbers chapter 3, verse 4. Nineveh as mistress of sorceries. Corrupts truth. Isaiah 47, verse 9 and 12. Babylon's sorcery is unable to stop judgment. Elements of sorcery, alteration, changing the essence of people, objects, or teachings. Deception, masking lies as truth through spiritual manipulation. Seduction, drawing souls into false systems with emotional or visual appeal. Rebellion, operating outside of Torah, authority, and structure. So the modern parallel to this is sorcery today includes spiritual overlays, false teachings, and ritual systems that feel holy, but they violate Torah standards. Even genetic modification and pharmakia, from the Greek pharmakeia, are considered sorcery, altering creation at its core. Why? It's dangerous. It rewrites the soul to respond to false rhythms. It blinds discernment, making lives feel sacred. It enslaves the remnant, keeping them trapped in systems that oppose the Torah. Final call to evacuate the New Testament. If a prophet or dreamer of dreams arises, saying, "Let us go after other gods," you shouldn't listen. For Yah, your Creator, is testing you. You shall purge the evil from your midst, according to Deuteronomy 13, verses 1 to 5. This is not a metaphor. It's spiritual triage. When a system leads away from Torah, no matter how holy it sounds, it must be evacuated, exposed, and purged. Now, what the remnant must do: renounce the New Testament as a source of sorcery and distortion, return to Torah as a sole covenant standard, restore sacred timekeeping, priestly order, and tribal identity, meaning you need to change your name. Equip others to test every teaching by Torah, not emotion, not tradition, or signs. Declare spiritual war against overlays, not peace with them. So Torah-based understanding, no authorization for a New Testament. Torah is the sole covenant document. The Most High made his covenant at Mount Sinai. He sealed it with blood, and he declared it eternal. You cannot extend that. Nothing comes after that. So that means the New Testament is indiscriminatory false. Exodus chapter 19, verses 5 to 6. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 1. No prophet, priest, or messenger was ever authorized to replace, revise, or add to that covenant. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2. You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor shall you take from it. No scriptural basis for a new covenant book. None. The term New Testament is found in Torah. I'm sorry, the term New Testament is not found in Torah. Torah speaks of renewal, not replacement. The New Testament replaces the Torah. The Most High never commanded a second book to override the first. He commanded obedience to what was already given. Prophetic warnings against counterfeit covenants, Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 16 to 22, warns of prophets who speak visions from their own hearts, not from Yah's mouth. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20, to the Torah and to the testimony. If they do not speak according to this word, Torah, it is because there is no light in them. Any book or teaching that contradicts Torah, replaces priesthood, or erases sacred time is unauthorized sorcery. Conclusion, the Most High never authorized it. I'm not rejecting a book, y'all. I'm returning to the only covenant that was ever given. The Most High's voice is in the Torah. His rhythm is in creation. His order is in priesthood and tribe. Anything else is unauthorized spiritual technology and a counterfeit system designed to seduce and not sanctify. Shalom.